would argue that we need to do more than restore funding. We need to actually increase beyond the restoration point, really invest in the service. And the why is because, contrary to what some people might have heard that's floating out there in the community, public transit in Canada can't generate revenue. It has to be a subsidized service. Every operator right across the country knows this reality. There are other councils and other jurisdictions that understand that as well, and they fund their public transportation system accordingly, and as a result they have better outcomes in their community. Their communities are healthier, their cities and their infrastructure is healthier. It's just all around better for everybody. But we just don't even come close here in St. John. We have this idea that our public transportation system should be generating money. I hear people talking about how it should be run like a business constantly, and I'm really not sure what they mean by that, because I know that St. John Transit is a well-run operation. There's no fat to trim there. The only thing that we have left to do to help our transportation system is fund it properly. Well, it's not exclusive to St. John. Studies for public transportation show clearly right around the world that riders want frequency and convenience. So we need to increase route frequency, and we need to provide conveniently located stops for people to actually come and use public transit. So there's that, but we also need to make sure that we have a long-term commitment to the commission and to the operation, specifically on funding. What I've seen happening in St. John over the last number of years is year after year, the funding is determined based on whichever way the wind blows. There is no long-term commitment. There's no strategic vision for our transportation system, and in my opinion, that's what we desperately need in this community. I'm sure that stigma exists. I think that might be oversimplifying the culture here a little bit, though. I think that a lot of people, including low-income residents, drive cars and are dedicated and devoted to their personal vehicles simply because they have to. I'm a great example of that. I would not own a personal vehicle if I didn't have a job that wasn't located on a transit line. If I had access to transit, if I could get to work on the bus, I would have canned my car a long time ago, turned off my insurance. I'd be so thrilled if I could do that. But it's just not an option for me because I have to pay the rent. And there are all kinds of people in this community, a lot of low-income residents as well, who are stuck in exactly that position. In fact, I personally know families where individuals have lost their job because of transit cuts. I get very frustrated when I hear people talking about how fat needs to be trimmed and the operation needs to be run more like a business, because they're obviously not thinking about the economic benefits of having a robust transportation system. Great example being these families where people have literally lost their income, lost their source of income, I should say, because they can't get to work. I have been very disappointed by the recent history of successive councils that have stated very clearly during election and campaign time, and then after being elected, that public transportation was one of their top priorities. Our most recent council did exactly that. It's still on a sign up on the wall in the council chambers. And yet, those same councils have repeatedly and consistently not supported transit in action, definitely not funded it. They have made urban planning choices that don't support public transportation. So I think that we need for that to change. It has to change if we want this to be a sustainable and livable community. And I would challenge any future leaders in this community to make sure that transportation isn't just a priority in words, but in actions as well. Thanks for listening to my rant, and I sincerely hope that our community in the long term supports an investment, an ongoing investment in our public transportation system.